There we go. Yes, welcome, friends. So glad you're all here. We've got an awesome event today with both Brandon Letsinger and Brandy Gallagher, both in the Cascadia bioregion, working at different scales. And it's going to be a tight ship. They'll present for 10 minutes each. We'll have 10 minutes of Q&A, and you'll also have a chance to meet each other. But just to ground us, um, as I like to do every time we gather, just in the purpose of why we're here, I'm going to put this in the chat um, and read it aloud, and then maybe next call ask someone else to read it. But yeah, the purpose of all this, why we're here, the BioFi community of practice is to cultivate and support a global community of practitioners who are designing, capitalizing, implementing, and evolving bioregional financing facilities through peer-to-peer learning and coordination. Um, and it's been beautiful to see a lot of that peer-to-peer coordination and learning already occurring. We've got over 275 people from around the world in this community of practice. Folks have been organizing calls. The folks in Asia and Oceania have gotten together, and because this time is very inaccessible for them, they found a time to meet and explore their own interests. And also want to shout out Charles Harrison, who's been hosting a regular call on digital currencies in this space. So it's really exciting seeing all the activity. And we want to continue to support that. And so in a little bit here, I'm actually going to run a quick poll just to get a little feedback and sense of how new you all are here and how we could best support. But before I do that, I want to ask you, Samantha, is there anything you want to share just to get started? Any updates?
Yeah, we are just so excited with how this community is growing and the energy that we're seeing in the high-low group and the many conversations that we've been having with all of you. And we are looking forward to continuing to explore how this community can be of service. And we are really enjoying these field building calls to hear about projects that people are working on. So if you have a project you want to share, please apply to join in one soon, or send the application along to a colleague working in your bioregion who you think might be a good candidate.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I'll put the link to that in the chat in a little bit here, so no need to go searching. So I'm just going to launch a very quick poll. It should take a minute. It's all multiple choice. You can answer as many as you want. And if it's tricky to navigate with Zoom, no worries. But we'll just have this open for 2 minutes to help us get a sense of how we can best serve you. And while we're doing this, I'll put some of the info Sam shared about in the chat so you know how you could offer to present here at one of the field building calls.
Looks like we have a lot of folks from Cascadia, which is awesome.
Yeah.
If you're up for it, share what bioregion you're calling in from in the chat.
And then other BioFi news with this last minute remaining, there's 7 hours left in Gitcoin Grants 21, which, if you're not familiar, is a Web3 based project to allocate often over millions of dollars of matching funds to building public goods projects. And this round, they've included a lot of bioregional and regenerative finance initiatives, including 2 projects that the BioFi project and some of our allies are working on together. And so if you haven't checked that out, either to donate or just to learn more about the amazing ways people are coordinating to allocate funding to bioregional initiatives, I really encourage you to do that today. And I'll put a link in the chat so you can see that.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. Thanks so much for these responses. I'm going to go ahead and end this. This is really valuable for us to know how we can roll out the offerings that best support you. Okay, ending that there. And I want to head us into, and we'll share these results later, but I want to head into breakout rooms so you all can meet your friends and potential new collaborators here. We'll have like 7 or 8 minutes. And the questions I'm suggesting we explore here today is just, let's see, yeah, what are you most excited about the work that you're doing right now? And then also, what's the most challenging thing in the work you're doing right now? And what could you use support with? So I put that in the chat. I'm going to organize these breakout rooms right now, and you'll be with one or two other folks. Right. So creating these. Okay. And away you go. If you have any tech support needs, I'll be here. Let me know.
All right, welcome forward, everyone.
Did anyone get lost or did everyone make it? Looks like everyone made it. Wonderful. Um, glad that was enough time, and it seems like there's a lot of one-on-ones, which is always exciting to see. Please know you can always follow up with folks on Hilo later on. But we'd love to turn it into our main events, the presentations from Brandon and Brandy. Um, Brandon was dealing with some tech issues, so just want to check in. Are you ready to start, Brandon?
Yeah, give me just a minute to get set up here, and then I'll jump in.
Wonderful. And just a heads up, Brandon, I'll give you kind of a 2-minute warning at the end when you've gone 8 minutes in, and then we'll have 10 minutes for Q&A.
Great. And are you able to see my slides okay?
I am, yes.
All right, wonderful. Well, yeah, thank you, Tyler, Samantha, and everybody here for joining me. My name is Brandon Letsinger. I live in Seattle on the Cedar River watershed as part of the Salish Sea and the Cascadia bioregion on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish and Duwamish people. I am the founding director of the Department of Bioregion, a 501c3 nonprofit social movement organization that educates about Cascadia and bioregionalism. Beyond just a place, we steward and grow the idea of Cascadia as a social movement to get every person active and engaged about issues they care about, a cultural identity rooted in a love of place and the watersheds we call home, and a vision that we can all be working towards in a positive, collaborative, and holistic manner. Our mission is a world of bioregions and bioregional movements. And beyond Cascadia, we want to know, what are the other bioregions of our planet? Who are the movements of people making the needed change happen? Regenerate Cascadia is a nonprofit program that we are building designed to visualize and connect regenerative projects and communities happening within our bioregion, identify core design challenges, and break down silos, accelerate learning, get people to think on the scale of watersheds, ecoregions, and bioregions, and to be a bridge to help administer a bioregional financing facility and funding ecosystem that can see people supported in the work that they need to do as defined by themselves. This idea emerged a year and a half ago from the Regenerative Communities Global Summit and the first ever Salmon Nation Edge Prize, where I met my co-administrator and co-founder of Regenerate Cascadia, Claire Atwell. Claire Atwell is a community artist, weaver, and organizer based in Victoria, British Columbia, while I live in Seattle in the United States. However, we both live in the Salish Sea, the same ecosystem, and yet divided by two countries. So together, during the Salmon Nation Edge Prize, we came together to ask, how do we regenerate an entire watershed, ecoregion, and bioregion, irrespective of these boundaries? If you're not familiar with Cascadia or the Cascadia bioregion, it is a bioregion that sits on the northeast Pacific Rim, and it stretches from Mount St. Elias to the north in southeast Alaska, kind of the traditional Tlingit territory and the furthest extent of that, all the way down south along the Cascadia subduction zone to Cape Mendocino in the south, and as far east along the Continental Divide as the Yellowstone caldera. In total, it stretches for about 2,500 miles or 4,000 kilometers. More than just watersheds. Yeah. More than just watersheds, though. This is an area that's defined through geology, through ice and glaciers, through massive floods, which have helped shape the weather, soils, ecosystems, the character, and the ways of living within this region. Ultimately, it is the Pacific Northwest of the United States and the southwest of Canada, as defined through our watersheds, and it is the Columbia, the Snake, and the Fraser rivers. A bioregion is a whole system way of looking at place. It emerges from many layers overlapping with one another. Never just one layer, and almost more of an atlas than a map. In this map by David McCloskey, which was published in 2015, he brought together more than 70 different physical, ecological, and cultural layers that came together to help this bioregion emerge. And all to just say that this idea of Cascadia as a movement, a place, a bioregion has been building in this region for more than 40 years. And it comes from a rich grassroots tradition of congresses and meetings and gatherings to really help explore these questions and ideas. So why does any of this matter? It matters because no matter what problem you're talking about, nature acts on the scales of bioregions, ecoregions, and watersheds. Nature acts bioregionally. Whether it's fires, floods, droughts, food, economy, energy, growth management, disaster preparedness, salmon, earthquakes, this will be the scale that we need to consider. Well, we can take action in our own watershed communities where we can walk out the front door to get active. Cascadia is the largest extent where these connections based on physical sense will make sense. Based on physical place will make sense. Cascadia then also becomes a container where we can break down far off, scary, intangible issues like climate change or biodiversity loss down to a local level, define metrics for success and failure, and for what regeneration actually means, and know the thresholds and carrying capacity of the regions where we live. So, where do we start? For us, with Regenerate Cascadia, we started with an activation tour that we hosted last October. And basically, since Claire and I met at the Salmon Nation Edge Prize, which ran from April to May, we basically organized with more than 100 different community organizers, regenerators, regenerative projects, and communities around the Sailor Sea and Willamette Valley. And then we organized an activation tour which took place from the end of September through the end of October, in which we traveled to 14 different communities in 30 days. We met with more than 1,000 different people through presentations, field trips, workshops, all asking, what would it take to regenerate an entire bioregion? From this, we started to formulate our core design challenge. And within this, it really was about realizing that people were out there doing the work, but oftentimes they were isolated. They were not resourced to the level that they needed. And we also realized that we do not have the capacity to be operating on the scale that we need. We don't have the capacity to be operating on the scale of an entire watershed, an ecoregion, or a bioregion. If I live, here in Seattle, we can talk about raising $54 billion for phase 3 of our light rail expansion. We can raise several $100 million to build a new school through a levy or bond. But if we want to regenerate a watershed, it's go donate to your local nonprofit. And so this became one of our biggest core design challenges is how do we help people who are doing the work visualize what they're doing? How do they connect with other people? How do we see their work supported? And then how can we start to flow funding into these landscapes and grow capacity to where it's at the scale that we need to be to impact and create the change that we need? So with that being said, since last October, we did the activation tour, and then afterwards, we came together for an online Cascadia summit. And we invited all of the people that we had met with who helped us organize to come give presentations. More than 50 people came, gave presentations, talked about the work that they're doing, and really also then explored this idea of growing parallel learning in landscapes, and connecting people together doing similar work who maybe weren't familiar with one another before that had happened. The following week, we had a Cascadia summit and actually had an unconference to help us start planning what we wanted to build with Regenerate Cascadia. And since then, we've been working with more than 140 different people through our online communities, through our Telegram, starting to grow the website, to help us explore what is Regenerate Cascadia as the program as we're building it. And we've really identified several different areas that we think are important. The first is what we're calling ambassadors and stewards. Ambassadors are just the idea that as people step on, we need to have an onboarding process. People need to be able to be familiar with what Regenerate Cascadia is, what Cascadia is, what bioregionalism is, what is bioregional mapping, why does any of this matter? And then be able to see some of these presentations and get the context of where this is coming from and why it's important. Stewards are then the people who are actually making, kind of working and doing the work in their communities, in their landscapes, to start to create these hubs, to start to create these guilds, and are actually undertaking the work and helping coordinate people in their areas. In terms of our structure, the first thing that we're really focusing on is the idea of landscape hubs. The idea of a landscape hub, as we talk about it. Oh yeah, go ahead, Tyler.
Hey, Brandon, we're about at 10 minutes, and so I'm curious if there's kind of a sentiment you want to close on before we turn it over to questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the last thing I'll end on in one really big sentence is just we're really focusing on the idea of landscape hubs as being responsible for a discrete area and helping administer a bioregional regeneration fund. We have the idea of guilds, which are just communities of practice around topics that are important for all of those people in the communities doing the work that they need to know. So it's generating classes and resources and directories. And then lastly, it's just actually creating a BioFi, a Cascadia BioFi program, which is really about building this funding ecosystem that gives everything teeth. So really setting Regenerate Cascadia up as a bridge that can help steward funds into the landscape and have it be allocated by the people living there. And so with that, I'll stop and thank you, Tyler.
Thank you so much, Brandon. And I'll share the link to this at the end, but we'll get into some questions here. And Brandon is already a high-low rock star and has put up a post in the community of practice page with lots of more information and links. And so you can always return there to learn more and add questions. But first, I just want to check in with Samantha to see if there's any reflections or questions you want to offer. And then others, feel free to raise your hands and I'll call on folks as I can.
Yeah, such incredible work, Brandon and Claire. Thank you for sharing it with us today. And I think there's so much other bioregions can learn from how you all are organizing. I really like the guilds and hub structure, and I am excited to explore how financing connects with that guilds and hub structure. But I want to just go ahead and open it up to whoever else wants to ask questions or provide feedback.
Yeah, go for it, David. I think you're on mute. There you go.
And an earlier I think the perhaps the opening community of practice call or one that was near shortly thereafter. There was a little note in the chat of Brandon about some work about in-person gatherings coming together in Cascadia, and some interest about involvement with you, perhaps if I heard or read correctly, in a continental assembly. But I just wondered, in general, where you're at with in-person assemblies within the context of this a great work that you're doing with Regenerate Cascadia.
Yeah, that's That's awesome. And a great question. So yeah, I mean, I think really realistically, what we realized is we kind of got, we've only really been organizing Regenerate Cascadia for about 8 months now, since the activation tour and getting everything set up. And what we realized is we kind of like started to run, and then we really had to hit that pause button and actually go, wait, what's our capacity? What are we growing? And what we determined is also that we really need to do a high level of sense making. And so who are the hubs? Who are the people in the landscapes? And I think what's really exciting, though, is that everything around the landscape hub is designed to be about people in the landscape who are doing the work. And that's really important. So the idea of in-person gatherings and then growing towards everything that we'd like to grow towards are these eco-regional structures that are connecting people together, with the ultimate goal of having a bioregional Congress. And beyond the idea of just a one-time event, but actually to have a standing body that can be helping really talk about some of these issues in ways that I think was done in the past. So that's something that we're really excited by. And we have people that are really excited in the Salish Sea. We have people that are really excited in the Willamette Valley. And we have people who are really excited in the Columbia River. And those are all areas that we want to explore, both eco-regional gatherings in person, and then how we bring these together in person for a broader bioregional Congress as well. And also with trying to figure out the challenges, and I think you know some of this, of how can we have in-person gatherings in an equitable way that can really invite lots of people from all over and, actually have a representational body.
Go ahead, Tricia.
Yeah, Brandon and Claire, I just want to thank you for all of the work that you've been doing. It's just so inspiring and really informative, I think. And one of the things that I've been curious about is that I see a lot of times with funding, it's like the chicken or the egg thing, where it's like, oh, the there's an idea that, oh, the bioregions aren't ready for funding. Yet without funding, the bioregions are trying to do all of this activation without resources. And I'm just wondering, because you've been doing so much, how have you managed to be doing that? Like, how have you been resourcing yourselves and what you're activating? And what do you see as the gaps kind of in that? If you could kind of touch on that a minute. Thank you.
Yeah, what a great question. I think in terms of yeah, I mean, so one of the really important things that we have found, I think that's really important, is that people need to be paid and supported to do this work. We can't be requiring and asking people to really hold jobs and really to do this work. We need to have that paradigm shift where, rather than people going out and working full time, doing horrible job that might not be good for the planet, and then go volunteer your time. We need to really see that paradigm shift where our communities, the people in them, are actually supported, and the people who are doing the work are supported. And I think that that's a really interesting and honestly, with the idea too of not just that being money, but a multi-capital approach that really sees people visualizing, working together. And that's been really important as we've grown. And we're very lucky, because I think this is also, we need to break out of the scarcity mindset. And when we sit on a project by project basis or a silo by silo basis, funding can be really scary and challenging. And we fall into this trap of competitive funding, and we're all fighting against each other. And when we step up to that landscape level and we actually start bringing together coalitions of organizations and groups operating on the scale of a watershed or landscape, what's really exciting about that is it's positive and now it's collaborative. And I think that we can get out of the scarcity mindset. There is enough funding. There are people who want to fund regenerative work in this region, and they literally can't because we don't have a way that we're visualizing it. And so the people who are kind of in the path to get that funding are kind of like that main nonprofit industrial complex, or governments or large corporations who are positioned to be able to get large grants, who can navigate the complex, legal frameworks or other things. And so if we can build that ourselves, we can actually create these coalitions, and I think that, and actually start to shift funding to the scales that we need. And that's something that we've been really working towards too. I think the biggest way that we're looking at doing that for our next year is to try to actually include people as part of a federated grant process. So we want to work with the 100 people that we did our activation tour with now, to actually start to have them challenge them with, what do you need to create a landscape hub, and create a budget, create a vision, beyond just one organization. What do you need for an entire watershed? And then we want to start with that. And that's our sense making that will help guide our strategic vision into the future.
I was feeling inspired and just energized as you were speaking there, Brandon. Thanks so much for that response and all the work. That was cool. I'm going to wrap us there so we have plenty of time for Brandy as well. But again, Brandon's on High Low. I'll share the link at the end of the chat. You can follow up there. So now we'd love to turn it over to Brandy Gallagher, who is a founder of our Ecovillage, a regenerative learning center and hyperlocal project that I think fits into the tapestry that Brandon and colleagues have been weaving. And excited to hear from you, Brandy. I'll give you a message when you have 2 minutes remaining in the chat.
Thank you so much. And I'm wondering, can I screen share okay already?
I'm not seeing anything yet.
But I can. Yes, I can.
But yeah,
So I'm just going to introduce myself for a second. And thank you so much for that, Brandon and Claire, and just everybody for being together. This morning, I am calling in from our Ecovillage, one united resource Ecovillage, which is a 25-acre regenerative design and research educational bioregional center. And so we're just in the Cowichan Valley on Vancouver Island. And I'm curious how many people have actually heard of our Ecovillage, if you put up your hand. Some people don't have a screen on, but it's fun to see what kind of percent. And it's curious to know for us, because in the past 25 years, we are just celebrating our 25th anniversary. Prior to the pandemic, we were 10,000 learner connects per year coming into the interaction with our Ecovillage. And it's surprising often that in the local, I heard you say hyperlocal, but in the local, there is often people who have not heard of our Ecovillage, and yet people come from all over the world. We have 9 countries on site right now, and people come here because they think of the bioregional element of this school and what has happened for us in the Salish Sea. And so in the last 25 years, let's see if I can share this. Is that working? Yes. In the past 25 years, our, again, one united resource, came together kind of as an example of what's being described as bioregionalism. There was many of us in an urban setting who were involved in bioregional work throughout the 90s, and you probably know a lot of those cast of characters. But eventually we thought about how to have an urban and a rural connection over the miles, and how to be both and within this region. And our story has a lot to do with the Salish Sea because of our relationship with the Indigenous peoples here, especially from the Cowits and the Coast Salish relations that are a very large part of our Ecovillage. So I want to say that one of the things we're kind of most known for is all our legal and regulatory work that we have been up to over the last 25 years. We, in 2002, created a significant land use rezoning that set a precedent in Canada, but much used throughout the United States. And People come from France to talk about our land use design. Some people think of the terms permaculture and ecological design when they think of here. Certainly, we're part of that movement, the Ecovillage, global Ecovillage movement. Our Ecovillage is part of the founding of Ecovillages Canada, and we have provincial hubs, we have national hubs, but and we obviously have North American and global, but what is very significant is what has occurred over the last 35 years, but particularly 25 years on the 25 acres that is a park, a school, an organic farm, a residential village. We're allowed 10 homes on each 25 acres. And we are legally allowed food services and accommodation services and unlimited businesses related to agriculture and for-profit business. So this is kind of a small, like, bioregional school, fully intact way of designing to have the social, the ecological, the economic, and the worldview, which is kind of part of the curriculum that was designed internationally and ratified by the United Nations in the 80s when the Eco-Village movement came about. And really, it is well sprung from the community. It is grown organically, literally and figuratively, but out of what was present in this area and who the peoples and the organizations are. So one thing that makes us quite unique is we're probably one of the largest natural building sites in North America. So you see here a picture of our 0 Mile eatery where we gather. We build earthen and straw bale buildings. Food production and land systems are also known because of precedents we set with building codes, with wastewater policy. We have the first wastewater man-made wetlands that feeds food forests in Canada, and it's all about replicating what is done. So this is more of a finance conversation. There's all kind of the history of what has happened and amazing teachers and facilitators that bring forward kind of the ancient knowledge, marrying it with the technology and the certainly uncertain future that we're headed towards, and finding this balancing act in day-to-day life. But there's a curious thing in our history as we go forward. We are also known for work. A lot of lawyers happen to hang out here, and in the early 2004, we had a legal team that started to look at the FOG project, how to finance, own, and govern the commons. And so we had lawyers from across the country. We had a really robust team that looked for 8 years at models in North America for how might the commons actually, it's kind of an oxymoron to think about owning the commons. So how do you navigate that? How do you be in place? And what kind of governance systems could work with that, local to bioregional, and within the territory of the Coast Salish peoples. And so that history brought us along through a long phase of building a demonstration site. And each of these, you would find these on our website, but when we talk about the kind of gatherings and the learnings that created almost unimaginable level of community building. And recently we've taken the permaculture model and looked at the different layout of the zones of permaculture and started to focus on the F in finance. And we're looking at an overlay in the zones of how to move at this critical time. We've just run into a big change, I think, in the national strategy of bioregionalism. The economic crisis, the ecological disruption, the adversity in health and mental and emotional well-being has challenged the models of where we thought we might go in designing bioregional schools. And it's quite real here at our Eco-Village. that we've had to now pivot and create a 2050 vision. We've actually lost our finance model. And this is shocking to us after 25 years of service. We are a nonprofit community services multi-stakeholder cooperative. This hasn't been focused on the economic elements really at all. And now we're having to pivot into bringing together our multiple threads of who we are. And our new vision is called Awakening the Dragon and Restoring Our Collective Future. And we've just finished with the McConnell Foundation, A Theory of Change. And our impact statement is really about shifting the transformation of worldviews and restoring the human perspective because of all these things, you know, really that you just described, Brandon, and all these challenges. How do we create a metamorphosis in the behavior affecting how we as humans are living in these bioregional settings and dying? We really take on like cradle to grave in the human cycle and get out of the Anthropocene and look at what else is needed within that. So our finance focus, we've just rebooted the FOG project, how to finance, own, and govern the commons. We have a new legal team. We have a lot of pro bono lawyers that are both in the US and Canada, but actually across Canada, folks who have a really good background in working with organizations like Co-op Law and so forth. And most of us have been here over the last 20 something years already doing this work, but there's an opportunity that sits, and it has something to do with the intersection within land back and protecting land forever and innovative currency. And so there's a number of folks that are within this work and researching. We're going to seek 2-year financing, like bridge financing and a syndicated mortgage, and bring together a group of investors, but that's going to give the time to create a new model for Canada and probably for the US, working with Alex Coran and looking at how to use community land trusts or ways that the commons is not owned per se, but that could be accessed, not owned. And really in that kind of level of access is collective financing. We'll model it for our Ecovillage, but it's really meant to model out across projects and places and educational work organizations within the bioregion and probably within Turtle Island. And as we move through those partnerships, we have a strong holding, and a large amount of our co-op now is First Peoples owned. And if we couldn't give the land back, we could start to move the ownership back in our share structure. We have all 3 levels of government. We have 13 university and college programs. We have kindergarten and grade 12 programs as well, but business and corporate sponsorship and 40 other kind of supporting organizations and NGOs. So you can see, to move into BioFi, to move into this kind of level of financing, looking at how to work through stages and then across time, is really to bring together like a reconciliation package to work with our certainly uncertain future and all the earth changes and the people changes that come. We've created a structure for that finance. We also have our sustainers program, so it allows for people to come in at different levels. I want to say this is for a location, but it could also be the same kind of structure where people literally become part of their own kind of landscape or territorial economic planning. And one of the things that when I said that we're living, you know, regenerative living and dying, is this is kind of a curious way to land back, to revalue things, but we've created a way to bring together conservation, land protection, and end of life planning. And we did this in actually 2009. We wrote the green burial policy for North America on commemorative conservation scattering grounds, and creating legacy. So, you know, we're in the territories of the Coast Salish people. The people have been here since time immemorial, and their bones are in the land. I think acknowledging and going back to the bones of the land, I'm just going to flip past that, but we start to understand that we're all on a road that is not forever. And how can we make the work that we're doing a legacy? How can we protect this beautiful bioregion? How can we protect places and processes and the work of that is happening within there, and team this up with the natural course of life and what will be an inevitable outcome for us all, and leave that kind of legacy. So there's an invitation here to know that mostly within the Cascadia Coast Salish region, we've partnered together a wide number of people, and we're doing a call out. We literally have a matter of months we're down to where our Ecovillage could disappear after all this time. And it's kind of a surreal, but very real experience to be in the award-winning, internationally recognized work can all shift on a dime when you use debt financing tools. And as folks probably know, insurance is quite terminal now these days for a lot of organizations. And when you don't have insurance, your debt financing often doesn't work either. So mortgages are departing. There's 13 other shared farm projects in British Columbia that are in the same position and in a legal challenge of how to go forward or to even exist. Some of them have already departed, and some of them are splitting up. But we're in a great time of change. So as we have all this opportunity, I think it's important that we really also acknowledge the deep change. The invitation is, if you have some response to this, please find us. We're working together across stakeholder groups of all sorts, but the timing is critical. There's an urgency, as much as this is a slow finance and slow money design. Relationship moves at the speed of trust, but at the same time, things are changing quickly. And how do we sort of find a reconciliation within that in all our relationships? So I want to raise my hands to each and every person for the work that you're doing. And in this, neck of the woods, this is Haichka, and just a deep gratitude for everybody and putting your hearts and beings to the path forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brandy. Really appreciate all that. It felt like a crime to stop you mid-flow with all that you're holding there and the moment of urgency you're in. So thanks for sharing that with us. We'll only have time for maybe 2 questions here. But again, we'll share Brandy's info, and you can find more and read that document that's so beautifully put together on Hilo. So yeah, Samantha, is there anything you want to reflect or ask?
I think given that time is short, I would like to just open it up.
Cool.
But thank you, Brandy. Such a powerful call to action. And I think the community would really love to support you, support this project.
Yeah, so if you have a question, feel free to simply come off mute and offer it.
I'm curious if both of you want to answer this, just your interfaces with local government, if there've been an impediment or they've been a support. And that's a big question, and probably there's a lot of nuance to it, but I'm curious if there's been overall you get traction with local politicians, or they're often in the way of movement forward.
I could take that because there is well-known politicians that will say this was the most pushed back project they'd ever seen, that transitioned into the most embraced project and supported project. And that's true for bureaucrats and regulatory authorities, politicians. We're often known as creating the seemingly impossible. What one of the major impediments are that I would say, being intergenerational now, is that nobody stays around long enough in government and you restart the conversation. In fact, at a credit union, at a banking level, at an insurance level, you have to restart the conversation probably every 3 or 4 years now, which is not feeling like we're gaining any directionality out of this. It feels like an educational process that slows things down quite dramatically. And maybe somebody else thinks into how that learning can be more solidly held, but things change. But the changing of the people, I think, has a real barrier to developing traction.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just maybe jump in and also add, I think it's really interesting. I think local government is probably one of the places where we can really make a difference and an impact, and really be able to connect and participate in those conversations, especially when it starts to think about planning, bioregional planning, policy, and building these funding ecosystems. We have one of our hubs that's developing. The person helping coordinate it literally helps allocate funding as part of state budgets, and is a NOAA technical monitor for one of the dam removal projects. And that's just a really amazing opportunity. But what we're realizing is that we have a lot of work to do to align our language and also kind of how we present these ideas to make it like palatable. And I think that this is going to go in a lot for, as we continue to get these groups off the ground, how are we aligning the language and structuring it, in addition to bioregional finance for local governance, and then also for the grassroots organizing and actual regenerators on the ground as well. So.
Wonderful. I think I'm gonna call it there, which is so sad. But Brandy, I think there's some messages of support in the chat, and I'd love to follow up with you to see how we can put out whatever sort of call to action you think would be most applicable for the community of practice that we can spread around as well. So we'll be in touch. It seems like there's folks interested in supporting.
Tyler, I can't see the chat super well. Can you track that, you're saying?
Yes, I'll track that
Okay,
and send you what I'm seeing there and follow up via email.
Okay.
But yes, thank you so much for being here, community. I'm going to paste a bunch of links in the chat. Want to give a shout out that on the 11th of September, we'll be having a BioFi deep dive call where we're inviting folks from the Regen Network to talk about ecological institutions and eco credits. You can find that on the Google Calendar. You can find that in Hilo. I'm going to also just put my email address here in case anyone has any tech needs that they want support with, or just have questions about how to engage in the community of practice. That's all there. Samantha, I'm curious if you have anything you want to check out with.
Yeah, I think I'm just holding, sadness that so many amazing bioregional projects are really struggling to get the resources they need to survive in the really immediate term. And that was the reason why I wrote this book and started the BioFi project. And we're still, working on it, trying to figure out how to bring more resources to all these incredible projects that are doing, what I often say feels like the most urgent work of our time. And I hope that we as a community can work together to figure out how to support the continuation of the amazing work that you and your team are doing, Brandy. So let's follow up. Maybe we can have a huddle on that, Tyler. Maybe we can organize like a call for folks that want to like brainstorm together. And yeah, really happy to see so many of you here today, and looking forward to the BioFi deep dive on eco credits, which I think is a tool that is relevant for so many bioregions. And Regen Network so far has been focused on kind of one project at a time. And we're really working with them on how can we develop a methodology that can be implemented on land projects across an entire bioregion. So that's what we're going to be talking about on that call. So would love to see all of you there.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Feel free to come off mute and say goodbye. Give any gratitudes you want to give. So beautiful to see you all.
Thank you. This was amazing.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Brandon. Thanks,
job.
Thanks,
Brandon.
everyone.
Thank you,
Everyone.
everyone.
Pleasure.
Thank you,
Auf
Claire.
Wiedersehen.
Thank you.
So
Bye bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Thanks,
Good
everyone.
night, John Boy. Good night, Mary Ellen.
Thanks for coming, David.